going to get started right now with news you can use. I've got an interesting topic I want to talk about today. What in the world is the Fed up to? I don't know what's going on with these guys, if they're smoking crack or what the deal is, but they just came out this morning with the threat to Wall Street. They basically said, you guys are too positive, you're too excited, you're too happy over an event that's not going to happen. And that event that investors and people in the stock market have been looking forward to is the Fed, instead of continuing to raise the rates, to in turn take them down. And they have indicated that the fact that everybody's anticipating rates go down is going to make them, and they called it today, we are not going to drop our rates in 2023. Now, I don't know how in the world you can make here on the 5th of January, 360 days to go, how you can tell the entire public that we are not going to drop rates during the year. They have no idea what's going to happen. If we had another 9/11 tomorrow, they'd have to drop these rates. There's all kinds of reasons that you can't go out and make these kinds of statements, especially as a threat. Now, I used to be a big admirer of the Fed. I thought they were probably the smartest guys in the room. When some of these guys, Greenspan and some of his successors, were in the chair as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, I thought these guys were brilliant and that they were, in theory, impartial, right? They didn't answer to either political party or any political party. In theory, they didn't have a preference. They had to monitor and monetize the economy, and their biggest mission, their number one goal, was to keep inflation in check. Over the last several months, I pointed out a couple of times on these videos how I believe they are manipulating not only the numbers themselves, but the media. And let me give you an example why. When you hear about 7% inflation, what they're talking about is today versus 1 year ago today. Okay, stuff's gone up 7% in that period of time, but today versus a month ago, it went up 0.1%. And when you run that out over a year, that's times 12 or 1.2%. Their stated goal, their published goal, is to be 2% or less. They have used that figure, that analysis of today versus a year ago, just over the last few years. It didn't used to be like that. It used to be, what was the running thing? What was that looking like? What's the curve looking like? The curve's flat. Inflation is not going up. And I'm going to do another video next week I'll give you some real specifics as to why I think inflation through the consumer price index is a bunch of hogwash, because there are lots of workarounds, and what they don't factor into it is that people are willing, and they will steel themselves to tough situations, and they'll make it through. We've seen this happen since America was formed. We saw it happen during the First World War. We saw it happen during the Second World War. It'll happen today too. People will ignore high prices and they'll find something cheaper, for example. But they ignore that, and it's because it's their benefit to compare today to a year ago. Well, why not just say today versus 1960? Okay, inflation's gone up 400%. So why don't we just jack all the interest rates up to pay for all past sins? Their logic makes no sense. It's what's happening today. Today is today. Today is maybe yesterday, today, tomorrow, maybe going forward. But it's clearly the inflationary rate on a monthly basis has gone down continuously. And they're ignoring that. And they've taken into account now the fact that people are too giddy, too positive, too excited about the fact that inflation and interest rates are going to be going down. They said not only are they not going to go down, but we're going to continue to raise them, and we're going to do it for a whole year in advance. To me, it is absolute malfeasance. It is totally against their charter. They've stated over the last several months that they want to decrease employment or increase unemployment, however you want to call it that way. That's outside their charter, but we know in economics that if you reduce employment, there's less buyers to buy things out there. Well, less buyers, there's less demand. When there's less demand, prices go down. So they, in theory, through 4 or 5 logical steps, drop inflation by getting a bunch of people fired. Now they're taking the business owners represented by Wall Street. Wall Street is basically a bunch of companies, privately and publicly owned, and they want to force them to not think positively about this thing, because if you get too giddy, you're going to drive inflation up, and we're going to force it down by raising interest rates. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Canada has started it's called a re-education school for people who say things that they shouldn't say in public. And I saw one of the lead deals today in the news was they had ordered some guy to go to this re-education thing. Once again, this is for those of you who are old enough to know George Orwell, 1984. This is Orwellian. This is something that communist societies do. We're going to force you to go to re-education camp to retrain your brain so you don't say stupid things out there in public. Hello, First Amendment, let's get this thing serious, but they're not going to do that. And people are just going about their day-to-day business all over this country, and they're totally ignoring what's going on with the Fed and what the Fed is doing to jerk around with their money and, affect their lifestyle. And at some point, this merry-go-round's got to end. At some point, everybody's going to get pissed and, do whatever they do, revolt, boycott, do something. But people need to be aware of it first, and that's what I'm attempting to do. And you need to understand exactly how this thing works and why this stuff is so illogical. You are going to get penalized, stock market, because you're thinking that things are going to get too good too soon, that things are going to get better quickly. Because you think things are going to get better quickly, we're going to penalize you for the next 12 months, and we're going to jack interest rates up. That is something that the parties do to each other and to people. This is not something that impartial, in theory, a non-government entity, the Federal Reserve, they're not supposed to be, lockstep with the government itself, and they're supposed to be impartial. And this is something they're not supposed to do. Their only charter is to regulate the money flow and supply in order to control inflation. That's their only job. Their job is not to decrease employment. Their job is not to fire people. Job is not to run down the stock market. If we did that as individuals, if we put out something that people believed us and said, we're going to punish you for the next 12 months, and we manipulate the stock market like we did today, we'd be in jail. That's the kind of stuff to get you put in jail. Canada gets you into retraining of your brain, re-education in the Brain Academy camp. But here in the United States, it's okay to do. It's great. Go ahead. We don't care. Whatever. We just let it go. I would strongly suggest any of you guys who are watching this video, watch the Federal Reserve, watch what they do, because this will have a dramatic effect on your lives. And for those of us in the real estate industry, it is directly correlated, because if they're pissed at the stock market and they're going to raise rates or they're not going to lower them, same difference, it's going to affect our customers' ability to buy our product, which is houses. And so it digs right into the hip national bank. It will cost money out of everybody's wallets and purses, and it shouldn't be tolerated. So stay on this thing. If you need more information, go ahead and put something in the comment section. I'll be glad to get you, talk to you about it. And we'll see if we can figure out something to do besides talk to a handful of people or several hundred people or 1,000 or whatever. We need to have some massive action here to take back control, because this stuff is artificial. It's not right, and it's being manipulated. All right, that's it for News You Can Use.